Our worst fears of Apple might be coming true because they couldn't get us to sign up for their crappy services, so instead they decide to start putting paywalls on things we already use. Let's begin. I'm not excited to talk about this, but if you've been catching my Twitch streams or watching our podcasts, you know I've been worried Apple would do this for a long time, and for the first time this morning I'm actually reading reports that are alluding to the idea this might actually come true. It's not confirmed or anything, this is not an official statement from Apple, but it really is a trademark update that Apple had to very specifically make. They were not required to make this just to keep ownership of the term Final Cut, but essentially they made a trademark filing that allows Final Cut Pro to be registered as a subscription service instead of just a one-time purchase. Now, there's a lot of different ways this could be interpreted. Essentially what it means is something related directly to Final Cut. Apple may or may not. It's possible that they're just filing this trademark for no reason, and perhaps they just want to make sure they have their bases covered if they decide to do this in the future, but this trademark would allow them to incorporate some type of software-based subscription service that would directly tie in with Final Cut, which, in case you guys didn't know, I use quite a bit of and have used for the past 3 or 4 years as my daily editing program. Before Final Cut, I used to use Adobe Premiere and Adobe After Effects and the whole Creative Cloud suite for all kinds of different purposes, and the main reason I stopped using Creative Cloud and I moved away from Adobe was because of the monthly costs getting higher and higher and higher. They always rope you in at a fairly low price point. Like when you're a student, they give you some discounts because they know you're going to get attached to it and then you're going to start coming back. And then as years went on, Adobe slowly started increasing the price to the point that one day they just decided they wanted to charge me like $40-50 for Creative Cloud, and I just decided, you know what, that's a bit too much, so I'm gonna go ahead, switch to Final Cut, switch to Apple Motion, switch to Affinity Photo instead of Photoshop, or use Pixelmator, and I've had a great time switching over to these apps because they don't require software subscription services. You can just buy them once and you own them, and you even get updates for life. But now that Apple is registering this trademark, it has me really worried what they're thinking here, because there's good ways they can handle it and there's bad ways they can handle it, but overall I feel like people are kind of gonna be ticked off no matter what they do. So for one, let's start with the best case scenario, okay? I'm gonna try to be happy here. I'm supposed to be the Apple sheep. I'm supposed to praise them and gladly give Tim all my money, but I have a hard time not getting worried about this. So okay, best case scenario, Apple decides that everyone who has already purchased Final Cut Pro gets to keep Final Cut Pro, no additional charge. You still get updates for life, and you can still use the program as it exists today, no problem. You just keep editing. But for those who don't own Final Cut Pro, now you can also subscribe to it for hopefully a fairly low price, let's say $5 a month. So if you don't have the money to shell out $300 for Final Cut Pro, or if you really want to save some money, check out the Pro Apps bundle for education. Anyone can access that link and you get all of the Pro apps for a heavily discounted price. But if for whatever reason you don't have the $200-300 to shell out for Final Cut, you can now subscribe monthly to it, and now people have a somewhat more affordable way to access Final Cut. Okay, no harm done. Who knows, maybe even they launch this alongside Final Cut Pro for the iPad next month. It's got the keyboard, it's got the trackpad, it probably just needs a little bit extra RAM and perhaps an A14X chip of some kind, and boom, we can have Final Cut on the iPad, which means that the user base and the number of people that could potentially sign up for Final Cut has grown a lot, and therefore Apple wants to have a more affordable option for people. That would be fine, I guess. Some people might be a little bit annoyed by that and say, no, everyone should just buy it outright. And I would most likely agree with you, but at the same time, I agree. Options are fine. Some people might want to subscribe to this instead of dropping $200-300 on an app, which, in the iOS App Store and the iPadOS App Store, dropping that kind of money is less common, whereas getting people to sign up for $5 a month, that's a bit more in line with what people are used to on mobile devices like that. So that would not be as crazy. But there is, of course, some potentially dangerous ways this could go that would actually end up annoying the very large user base of Final Cut Pro users. Apple decides to make something like Final Cut Pro Plus, okay? And now they come up with different plugins or cloud-based storage or features that they bake into Final Cut but put behind a paywall. This could be $5 a month, $10 a month, and they say that, well, these are some great features we came up with, but you're gonna have to subscribe to them for life. You know, there's no way to permanently unlock them if you want to utilize these features, which the reason I hate that is because it means the primary focus of the software team is going to go towards paid features, and now they're going to start treating Final Cut Plus subscribers like they're actual customers, and then they start treating people who don't subscribe to Final Cut Pro Plus as second-class citizens. It's like, oh, you don't really like Final Cut, you just paid for it once. You don't pay for it every month? Oh, that sickens us, and then you don't get as many updates, you don't get as many features, and there's very little things to get excited for. So the other reason that would bother me is knowing how Apple handles software subscriptions on the iPhone and the iPad. Pretty much every time I open Final Cut, it's probably going to come up with some pop-up that says, hey, have you considered subscribing to Final Cut Pro Plus? The first 30 days are free. And we have an annual option that's only $50 a year, so you can really save some money that way in the middle of me trying to get my work done. You know, I'm just trying to open a program and use it, and instead there's a pop-up in the way, which has happened a lot with Apple Fitness Plus, Apple News Plus, Apple Arcade, all types of ads I've seen baked into iOS now, which annoy me because I thought iOS was supposed to be better than the pop-up ads world, but I don't want that stretching to Final Cut at all. So that would be one of the dangerous ways this could go that I would not be happy to see. And then for a moment, just because Halloween's coming early this year, let's speculate worst possible case scenario. Apple goes all out Adobe mode, okay? And just decide, you know what? If you bought Final Cut, you got Final Cut, but now, if you want software updates in the future, if you want Final Cut to get any kind of improvement, you're gonna have to join our Apple Work subscription service, and this grants you access to all the pro applications and routine software updates. But if you're not willing to subscribe to them, then you basically won't get any updates, which is essentially what Adobe has done with Creative Cloud. They kind of stopped at CS6 and just decided, okay, if you bought CS6, you get those programs, but if you want anything newer than CS6, you gotta join Creative Cloud. It's gonna cost you monthly, there's no way around it, and that's the only way to get new software updates, and that's the only way to get a more up-to-date version of Final Cut that, you know, has no bugs and has new features coming out to adapt to new file formats. And basically, they suggest that if you want to use Final Cut in the future, you're inevitably going to have to sign up with a subscription service, and knowing it's Apple, they could probably pitch this as being way cheaper than Creative Cloud, because you get Logic and Final Cut and Motion and all these great productivity-based apps for a low price of only $10 a month, whereas Creative Cloud, that's going to be more like 15, 20, 30 bucks a month, depending on if you got the education discount or you're on the business account. So Apple could still argue about how they're cheaper than the competitors, but I was very, very worried for a long time that whenever Apple was looking at all these different programs out there that were charging fairly high subscription services for their productivity apps, Apple was like, oh, that subscription-based revenue, it's so juicy. How do we get that on our programs? Don't do it, Tim. Don't give in. You guys can be better than this. Okay, there's some software out there that we should still be able to buy once, and we call it good for life. I know Apple is really, really into services these days, so I'm very nervous that they want to turn everything into a subscription. But I guess at the end of the day, what's going to make or break this news for me is whether or not Apple decides to grandfather in people who have already paid for the program versus make people who have already paid for the program start subscribing monthly to get the best features. You know, if it's just like a tutorial thing and it's like, well, if you subscribe to Final Cut, you'll get hands-on access to some industry experts and they'll give you some editing tips. And it's basically like Apple Fitness Plus. They just tell you, here's how to use our programs, and it's just a tutorial service. That would be one thing, and I would just be like, okay, thanks, I don't need that, but someone might, so okay, have your service. But if it turns into a thing where they're starting to put features into the program behind a paywall, that's when it's going to start to really annoy me. And if they pull an Adobe and just decide, we're not even going to update the software anymore unless you start subscribing to a new Apple Work plan or something like that, that's what's really going to tick me off and might even have me looking towards alternative software applications. I'm not willing to look right now. I know they're out there. You don't need to recommend me any right now, but Final Cut has been great, mind you. The export times are fantastic. I've been able to edit high-end tech videos like this on M1 MacBook Airs, you know, fanless designs, thanks to that optimization we have with Final Cut Pro on the Mac. The real-time playback is amazing. I'm comfortable with the feature set and all that. And this is coming from a guy who used Adobe Creative Cloud for work, for businesses, for school, for around 5 years. So I was very, very much baked into the Creative Cloud ecosystem, and just the sheer price of it is what mainly steered me towards Apple in one-time purchases. So I would hate it to see Apple go this way, but let's hope this trademark filing doesn't result in anything happening, and it's just a precaution Apple is taking, and once Tim realizes what a big mistake they're making, they won't actually go through with it. Okay? That would be great. What do you guys think is going to happen? Please give me good news. I can't handle any more depression. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you in the next one.